The National Electrical Code addresses the installation of non-metallic sheathed cable, often referred to as NM cable, through wood framing members. Specifically, the code dictates requirements for hole size and the number of cables permitted through a single hole. This is covered under NEC section 334.15a and 334.15b. These regulations are in place to ensure the structural integrity of the wood framing, prevent damage to the cable, and minimize the risk of electrical hazards. NEC section 334.15 addresses the spacing of the bored holes. Where non-metallic sheath cable is installed through bored holes in studs, joists, or rafters, the holes must be bored so that the edge of the hole is not less than 1.25 inches from the nearest edge of the stud, joist, or rafter. This minimum distance is crucial. Boring holes too close to the edge of the wood framing member can weaken the structure. Think of it like this: the edge of a piece of wood is more prone to splitting or breaking than the center. Maintaining a sufficient distance from the edge ensures that the structural integrity of the framing member is not compromised by the presence of the hole. It's also important to consider that fasteners, such as nails or screws, might be driven into the framing member. Keeping the holes away from the edges reduces the likelihood of accidentally hitting the cable with a fastener, which could cause damage and create an electrical hazard. Now, let's discuss NEC section 334.15b, which addresses situations where multiple cables are run through the same hole. Where 3 or more cables are installed through the same hole, the diameter of the hole must be increased by 1/16 inch for each cable in excess of 2. This requirement is designed to prevent overheating of the cables. When multiple current-carrying conductors are bundled together, as is the case when several NM cables pass through the same hole, the heat generated by the conductors can build up. This heat buildup can exceed the cable's temperature rating, potentially damaging the insulation and leading to a short circuit or fire. By increasing the size of the hole, you provide more airspace around the cables, which allows for better ventilation and heat dissipation. Let's consider some practical examples to illustrate these code requirements. Example 1. You're running 2 NM cables through a stud. According to NEC section 334.15a, the edge of the hole must be at least 1.25 inches from the nearest edge of the stud. Since you have only 2 cables, NEC section 334.15b does not apply, and you can use a standard hole size appropriate for the cables. Example 2. You are running 4 NM cables through a joist. Again, the edge of the hole must be at least 1.25 inches from the nearest edge of the joist, as per NEC section 334.15a. However, since you have 4 cables, NEC section 334.15b applies. You have 2 cables in excess of 2, therefore you need to increase the hole diameter by 2/16 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch. If the normal hole size for the cables is, let's say, 1 inch, you would need to increase it to 1 and 1/8 inches. It's important to note that these are minimum requirements. You can always choose to make the hole larger than the minimum required size, as long as you maintain the 1.25 inch spacing from the edge of the framing member. However, you should not make the hole excessively large, as this could weaken the framing member. Always consult the specific cable manufacturer's recommendations for the appropriate hole size for their cables. The NEC is not a design manual. It provides minimum safety standards, but it does not provide all the information necessary to design a safe and effective electrical installation. In addition to the specific code requirements, there are other important considerations to keep in mind when running NM cable through wood framing members. Firstly, always use appropriate tools and techniques to bore the holes. A drill with a sharp bit will create a clean hole without splintering the wood. Avoid using excessive force, as this could damage the framing member or the cable. Secondly, be careful not to damage the cable during installation. Avoid pulling or stretching the cable excessively, and do not bend it sharply. Use cable staples or other approved methods to secure the cable to the framing members. Thirdly, always inspect the cable for damage before and after installation. If you find any damage, replace the cable immediately. Damaged cable can create a fire hazard or shock hazard. Fourthly, consider using cable bushings or grommets to protect the cable where it passes through the hole. These devices will prevent the cable from rubbing against the sharp edges of the hole, which could damage the insulation. Fifthly, when running cable through fire-rated walls or floors, be sure to use approved fire-stopping materials to seal the hole around the cable. This will prevent the spread of fire and smoke. Finally, always follow all applicable local codes and regulations. Local codes may have additional requirements or restrictions that are not covered by the NEC. Understanding and following these code requirements is essential for ensuring the safety and reliability of electrical installations. By properly spacing the holes and increasing the hole size when necessary, you can prevent damage to the framing members and the cables and minimize the risk of electrical hazards. Remember to always consult the NEC and local codes for the most up-to-date information and requirements. Also, consult with a qualified electrician if you have any questions or concerns about electrical installations. It's better to be safe than sorry when it comes to electricity. A mistake can lead to serious injury or property damage. Always prioritize safety and follow best practices when working with electricity. And never attempt electrical work that you are not qualified to do. This information is intended for educational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional electrical advice. Always consult with a qualified electrician before performing any electrical work. Ignoring electrical codes can lead to serious consequences, including electrical fires, shock hazards, and property damage. Protect yourself and others by adhering to the NEC and all applicable local regulations. Remember, electricity is a powerful force that must be treated with respect. By following these guidelines, you can ensure a safe and compliant electrical installation. Firstly, always de-energize the circuit before working on it. Secondly, use properly insulated tools. Thirdly, wear appropriate personal protective equipment, such as safety glasses and gloves. Fourthly, double-check your work to make sure everything is properly connected and secured. Fifthly, test the circuit after you have completed the work to make sure it is functioning properly. Firstly, understand the NEC requirements for cable installation. Secondly, choose the correct size and type of cable for the application. Thirdly, install the cable properly, following all applicable codes and regulations. Fourthly, inspect the cable regularly for damage. Fifthly, replace any damaged cable immediately.